Words are about to be spoken on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, presented to you by the Podcast Heat and Ad-Free Shows Networks. I'm John Alba. That's the broken one, the woken one, the spoken one himself, Mr. Matt Hardy. What's going on, man?
All is good, man. Just hanging out, having a good time. Had a hell of a long week. We had a Team Boy last week. I know we ran the very special Monster Factory episode, which was very cool. I hope everyone out there enjoyed it. It was really fun to do like a virtual seminar and have it air over the podcast where everyone could watch it and kind of get a feel of what we were doing that night. It was a crazy week though. You know, it was me with all four kids. Besides Team Boy, also a girl, so it was Team Kids. My wife, she'd had a long time planned girls' vacation, and they went to Puerto Rico. And she was in Puerto Rico for 5 days, had a real nice time, really enjoyed it, which was cool. And I was here with the kids. I had to take 1 day off to go to Cincinnati to do some TNA, and had a crazy sleep schedule over the weekend. You know, like there was Friday night where I ended up sleeping about 4 hours and had to get up first thing and go catch my flight to go work for, you know, the length of the day. And then I slept about 3 hours that night and got back, and then had the hustle and bustle of all of the Hardy gaggle. And then my wife actually got delayed coming home. She was supposed to leave like at 6 o'clock or 6:15 and get in about 10 p.m. ish. She ended up departing at 1 a.m. and she got in at 5:15 a.m. So I had to be up at 4 o'clock to go pick her ass up too. So it was a wild weekend. It was nice to actually get some sleep last night.
Bro, you're rich enough to pay for that long Uber. Come on, man. You're a chivalrous husband.
There you have it.
As our friend would say, damn, that is a long trip. And a literally trip for you.
I am a benevolent husband.
That's a mad fact in its own right.
It is, yeah.
And I don't know. I heard it was a busy week at the compound too. Maybe we'll hear some more about that in the coming weeks. It could be be interesting to see how things unfold there. You're having a good time though, right? Like it looks like you're really, really enjoying TNA right now.
I have been. It's been a blast. It's been a great crew. It's so laid back. It's so pressure free, and just very enjoyable, man. And for the people that are fans of the Hardy compound content, there is going to be some coming soon, and I can confirm that. So keep an eye out. It's going to be a fun few weeks coming up. So you're really going to enjoy it, especially if you love the old school Broken Matt, Broken Universe stuff. There's going to be some fun stuff coming up soon, very soon.
Okay. Very exciting. Very exciting. Love hearing that. But yes, as you mentioned last week, we did air our Wrestling 101, the Wrestling School of Mattitude, How to Become a Wrestler episode over on the feed. If you haven't checked it out, it's one of the most unique podcasts you're ever going to hear. There are several talent from across the wrestling universe who put this episode over big, who said, man, no one better to learn from than Matt Hardy. And I just thought it was so unique. Now that you had a chance to kind of watch that back, I know you and I were running on fumes that day that we taped that thing, but it really was a fun event, wasn't it?
It really was. It was a fun event, and it was different. And I think sometimes when you step out of your comfort zone and you do something different, something unique, I think it's a great time to grow. And it's also a great time to really enjoy what you're doing and be present in the moment and have a good time. And I did. It was a lot of fun meeting all those new faces, all those new prospects, for potentially for the wrestling business going forward. It was very nice to meet them and interact with them and shoot the shit and kind of converse with them. They asked questions, I would offer my answers, and there were some really great questions that came through the line. And I enjoyed it. It was nice to hang out with Danny Cage, who's a true wild card there at the Monster Factory. He's a really unique, very special guy. He's so fun to talk to. We had a great time, man. It was really good. I appreciate the hospitality of everyone at the Monster Factory.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about it last week. I got down and dirty in the ring at the Monster Factory a couple of weeks ago with your boy John Cena's moveset.
Yeah, I saw that. You coming through hitting those 2 shoulder tackles, pick him up with that little back suplex without taking the bump, and you do the drop. You can't see me, and come in with that big fist drop. Look at John Cena. John Cena.
Right? It was fun, man, and I was so scared because this might be shocking to people. I've never done the 5 moves of doom on anybody. And we ran out of ring time because all the other people were hogging the ring before the show. So we pretty much did that as a cold run. And I was scared shitless running that thing, I'll tell you. But I think I've watched enough John Cena over the years, and I had a great dancing partner and a young man named Marvelous, and it was a lot of fun. I really had a good time doing that match, and yeah, man, it was a fun time. And I was thinking to myself after I did it, did you ever take the 5 moves?
I did not.
I wouldn't think you would have.
I was a baby. He wasn't doing that shtick, you know, whenever I worked against him. When
Right.
he first came in, I worked with him in some dark matches. I turned heel as Matt Hardy version 1, and we teamed for quite a while. We were teams quite a bit on the house shows and whatnot. Yeah, I don't think I ever took the 5 moves of doom, you know,
Now
or the John Cena
I haven't
offense.
looked it up, so I don't know for sure. And I was wondering, like, maybe 2010, 2009 when you turned heel, if there was ever any interactions, but he would have been on a different brand than you for the most part. And the only time I can think of was that show that they did. Remember with the whole Denver, Los Angeles thing where the arena had been booked
Yeah,
and then they moved it because of, I think it was the playoffs or something like that.
right.
And they did like a Team Nuggets versus a Team Lakers, and one of you were all the heels, the other were baby faces, and you guys were on opposite sides of the ring for that. But I don't think you took the 5 moves or anything. It's like a badge of honor taking the 5 moves, I feel like.
Well, it is. It's something people want to do. Like people want to take the twist of fate, especially these people that grew up watching Jeff and I, right? It's funny you just said that. That made me think about when we had that big star power tag team match following the Chris Jericho versus Ricky Steamboat and the
Right,
Legends
right,
or
right.
whatever. That man, we had a match like a 5-on-5
Yep. Hmm.
the next night. I know, and he could have possibly been in there. I'm not sure if he was or not. I know
Yeah,
Jeff was
I'm
over
pretty
there
sure he
too.
was in there for that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
but I don't remember specifically taking that, which is pretty wild in the big
Yeah,
scheme of things.
that is. I mean, you guys were on different tracks and different shows, and
Right.
babyface heel. That's an interesting. It's I don't know. There's just you'd think there's so many people who have faced John Cena over the years, but different time, different place. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Your boy Edge has certainly taken many of them over
Yeah.
the years. I
Yeah.
know that.
They those two guys were married together for quite a while. Yeah. He definitely has taken his fair share, no doubt about it.
Would you say that Cena is Adam's greatest rival? Like as a tag team, obviously it's you and Jeff. There's no questions on
Sure.
that. But main event Edge, Adam Copeland. You think John Cena is his best dancing partner?
I mean, he definitely stands out, you know, because John was a guy that was the guy, the face of WWE, and him and Adam, he really elevated him in many ways, and they worked as a main event across the top of the card for many shows. So a lot of people say that, you know, there's always those people that'll sit back and say, well, like, you know, you had your history and just your intense and, you know, the way the lines were blurred with Adam. I hear that once in a while, that you were his best opponent or whatever. But, you know, I think in the big scheme of things, probably when you look at the highest level program you could have working against somebody else, I would probably say that John Cena and Adam are probably the biggest. It's the biggest opponent of Adam Copeland's career.
Honestly, I wouldn't say you just because I don't think they got enough out of it. I think there was so much more they could have gotten out of you guys as
Yeah, there is for sure. They're 100%. And even when they ended it, they just did that for like they thought it would help everyone's peace of mind or whatever. But we were all fine. And like it's so funny, we were all fine through that, especially at the end. Everybody was like on the same page. You know what I mean? Nobody had any problems. We were fine working together. We were the whole while. Everyone was totally professional through everything. But you know, they just did that for their own state of mind. And then I think Vince thought putting me on another brand would give me the opportunity to, you know, and continue to elevate myself or whatever. And we ended up hitting that snag when they were like pushing me to be a little more selfish in things. And then I was selfish in that Undertaker segment, you know, and then that kind of came back to bite me. But it is what it is. So it's funny. We could have done more and we could have stretched it out and it could have been interesting. I think there could have been turns and twists and whatnot. Still, there was such a huge reaction whenever I did the deal and betrayed Jeff and turned on Jeff when he faced Jeff in that
yeah.
title match, you know, and Jeff ended up losing the title back to him. I mean, that was a great moment to kind of like tie off everything. That's how upset I was at my brother that I would, you know, take my worst enemy and allow him to defeat my brother. So it could have been more, but it was very intense with what we had, mainly being powered by the fact that no one knew where the line was between fiction and truth.
Certainly so. I think there definitely could have been more to come out of that. We're going to talk a lot more WWE over the course of this episode. This episode is going to be about WWE in Saudi Arabia, because that's where WWE is headed this weekend for King and Queen of the Ring. And we're going to talk a little King and Queen of the Ring and some of the unique experiences that you had in Saudi Arabia, because I can't think of many talent who have gone on the record talking about some of those early Saudi shows. So very excited to hear what you've got to say. And I have some unique thoughts on that too. But I do want to ask you before we get into that, AW Double or Nothing coming up this weekend as well. Pretty stacked card there. Swerve and Christian Cage. We got Anarchy in the Arena. Willow versus Mercedes. Some big time matches, no doubt about that. Anything on that card that you're looking forward to in particular?
A big fan of Christian Cage's stuff. The fact that he's battling Swerve, I'm very interested in that. Like, once again, I say this, like, I'm at the point in my career where I'm much more motivated to watch something if it's got a strong character and story going on more than anything else. Like, I love what Christian's been doing. I love his act. He's very entertains the shit out of me. And I love what the Young Bucks and the Elite, Jack Perry and Okada, they've been doing, and thing where they jump Tony Khan. Like, also, I dig their stuff. I dig what the Bucks are doing right now. Christian Cage, very excited for both of those matches. Those are probably my two favorite matches. I think the stuff that Adam Copeland has been doing with the House of Black's been really good. That's going to be a very intriguing match as well. Those are the things that first jump out at me when you say, like, you know, AEW has got a pay-per-view coming up in Double or Nothing.
Any thoughts on the whole Willow versus Mercedes thing? You know, I think they've laid foundations for Willow to really have a pretty intense story over the course of the summer. And I think this match is going to be where that all kind of starts. She got over huge in that segment last week with Mercedes Moné. And when she gave her the doctor bomb through the table, people were going absolutely nuts. When I hear Willow talk and I see her fire up, it's so endearing. And it's almost like Popeye once he eats the spinach, you know, he just bolts up and gets ready to kick some ass. And I know when I watch Willow, that's what I'm seeing. And for Mercedes, man, it feels like this has to be a standout performance for her. She hasn't wrestled in a year, so this is a big one.
It is a big one, and I'm sure that there's pressure that she is feeling because she really does have to produce when it comes to this match. But one thing you're saying about Willow is, I know you've been a big advocate of Willow for a long time, and you know, I have first met her when she came to AEW. Like, she really does have like a contagious personality, very much a contagious positive attitude in many ways, and that's something that I am big on, and I dig that very much about her. So she's always, when she's around, you always want to have a smile on your face because she just kind of lights up the room and she wants to make everybody feel happy, and she's in a good mood and she's positive, and she seems very productive in everything she does. So yes, she is very easy to pull for, and I am definitely pulling for her and her success.
But when you're naturally a good person and you're a baby face and people want to cheer for you, I'll ask your perspective on this. I'd have to imagine it can be a little difficult to dig into that more aggressive and rah-rah side of you, because it's almost easy to just go out there, smile, wave, and get cheered. But she had to turn up the intensity to really make people care about this match. Is that a challenge when you're a babyface like that?
I mean, you have to be. That's one of the first lessons Michael Hayes really tried to nail into our minds, is that, you know, you can go out and people can like you. You can be handsome, you can be attractive, you can be charismatic, whatever it may be. So, but if they don't believe, if they don't see you beat someone up, if they don't believe that you can beat their ass, if they got into a fight with you, then you're not going to be seen as credible. And he said, like, you guys do all these pretty and cool moves. He said, especially you, Jeff, but like, I want to see you and Matt be more aggressive. I want to see you be more vicious. Like, I want to see you do that poetry in motion. Then Matt like takes his head off with a clothesline, and then you get on top of him and beat the shit out of him. You know, you're on top of him, grounding and pounding. And I mean, those were truly some of the best tips we'd ever gotten. And I think the same thing applies to Willow, because I think people can see characters that they like and that are good, but if they don't seem credible from a physical standpoint and don't seem like they could in real life be someone who is aggressive and could whip someone else's ass, then I don't think the audience and the fans will not buy into you as much as they would without
Yeah.
without knowing that you can, or without believing that you can, because you have shown them that on, on your television programming. And there's a very true sentiment to that, because there are guys that go out there that seems like they're just doing moves and people never really attach to them. They never really they're never able to connect with them in that emotional way where they truly believe in them and they show credibility. And I think that's why Willow needed to tune it up like that. And sometimes you have to if you're a babyface, especially someone who's very likable, you have to show a mean streak, an aggressive streak, because people have to look at you and they still, in the back of their mind, even if it's subconsciously, they have to go like, well, I like this person a lot, but I would hate to make them mad because I think they'd whip my ass.
Yeah, my gut says, and my AEW track record with my gut,
I
it's
was
pretty
pretty
good.
good. You think on the same line of Tony Khan in the audience, so you do very well in your predictions.
My gut says that we're going to see a very similar storyline with her, akin to what we saw with Hangman Page a few years ago, where she's going to lose it all only to overcome her hurdles and make right on things in the end. Like, she's got Stokely and Chris Statlander in her corner right now. I totally could see a scenario where both of them end up with Mercedes, or in some way costing Willow at least. And then it becomes a path for Willow to have to find herself, be vulnerable, and overcome, the boss, Mercedes Moné. I think that would be a really great story to tell, to build a top tier babyface in Willow Nightingale. So I guess we'll see. But I do think, Matt, it's very important, and I'd love your thoughts on this. It's very important for Mercedes Moné now to take that next step and be that, again, the term, the final boss, where that women's division runs through her.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, especially because she has been presented with all this hype, all this glamour, and all this glitz, and she's going to have to produce. And it is what it is. Sasha, Mercedes Moné back in the day, would always come through and produce. But like you said, she'd been hurt, and it's been a long time since she wrestled. So I'm sure there's pressure on her to really produce like she used to.
Should be a good show. This is now 5 years. This is the 5th anniversary of the first AEW pay-per-view, which is pretty wild, all things considered. So they head back to Las Vegas for that. On the WWE side of things, Matt, it is King and Queen of the Ring. I'd have to imagine there's a lot of nostalgia around King of the Ring for you as a wrestling fan of the 90s and someone who got some of his first opportunities. People always talk about you and Jeff opening the doors at King of the Ring. What does that event mean to you in that tournament?
I mean, it is cool. It's very cool when they bring back things that were very special to you from your childhood. I remember seeing like, oh, it's King of the Ring, and like they would have the one night tournament, and these guys are going to wrestle 3 times, and whoever wins the whole tournament becomes King of the Ring, and it was a cool deal, right? So being a part of that, even the guys that opened the doors, that was like a big break we had. We got to go to a pay-per-view, and we heard it was going to be a very important opportunity. That's what we ended up doing, but we made the most of it, and they saw that we were kind of willing to do whatever to try and get our foot in the door. But like just being a part of the King of the Ring, I remember when we did King of the Ring qualifying matches, and then we were in King of the Ring, and myself and Jeff both had singles matches in the tournament. It was very cool because King of the Ring was something that was a staple in WWE whenever we were coming up, and we were at our, the peak of our fandom. So yeah, it's always cool to like be able to partake in those events.
This year, we're taping this on Wednesday. The finals right now on the men's side is going to be Gunta versus the winner of Randy Orton and Tama Tonga. And then it's going to be Lyra Valkyria versus the winner of Nia Jax and Bianca Belair. Any predictions for who walks out King and Queen of the Ring here?
I mean, I think Gunter ends up winning on the men's side. I mean, that seems perfect for him. I could see him really making the absolute most out of that, and that gets him back hot again after having such a dominant reign with the IC title, and gets him hot again. I think it pushes him into the world title picture. And I would say if you're going with a heel on that side, I would almost say Bianca Belair on the other side, just because I know she's one of the girls who is going to lead the women's division in the next few years to come. So I could see that happening too.
Interesting. Yeah, they're going all in on pushing Lyra Valkyria right now, right out of NXT as a pretty good, strong baby face. So my gut says Nia Jax is going to win the whole thing, honestly. I think they're going to go 2 heels this year.
You really?
And
okay.
I mean, it would make a lot of sense to have like a dominant woman queen of the ring here, and Nia
Sure.
Jax would certainly fit the bill with something like that. And I mean, but what a statement you're sending to the audience, right? By having this girl in Lyra Valkyria who's fresh out of NXT and pushing her all the way to the finals here. That's a pretty big statement in the confidence her. But I'd
Sure.
have to imagine there's a lot of pressure that comes with something like that.
There is. I mean, and that is something they could totally do. I almost think, just thinking in a WWE mindset, I feel like Gunther is the guy that they want to be a dominant king, right? So
Sure.
I just don't know if that would be repeated in the women's division as well. I don't know if they would have two people that are heels that are both going to be like dominant kings that, like, are ready to lower the guillotine on all their victims, whatever, so it'll be interesting to see. But I understand why you say that coming from the female side, and that would be very interesting, but I almost don't see them duplicating that on both sides in the men and women's division.
Well, we'll see. If your boy Randy moves on to the finals, you might have to shoot him a text wishing him good luck, because he might be eating some Gunther chops for the first time, and I can't imagine that is a fun night at the office either way. So hopefully he'll be all right. I'm with you, though. I think Gunther's absolutely winning on the men's side, and I think it's a perfect way for him to pivot into winning, coming out of losing the IC title. And that gives him something to hold on to without having a belt either. And I think that him versus Cody, or him versus whoever the world heavyweight title holder is at some point, that's your big match with Gunther. So we'll see when that comes. Matt Hardy, we are talking WWE in Saudi Arabia this week. But before we can, you know what I got to ask? Please hit us with that Matt fact.
Matt fact: Matt's phone is banned during home cardio.
Just concentration.
Yeah. I film like the last 10 seconds just like to make sure I break that 500 calorie mark, which I have to like haul ass the whole while now. I mean, this is my new regiment, right? But I turn it backwards so that I can't even see the screen and it's off. So just like I tell my wife, like, hey, I'm going to do cardio for 35 minutes. You have to come down and talk to me if you need me. That's where I will be. So I just do that because it's sometimes I wear headphones and there'll be music playing, or I'm watching a TV show. I just try and do whatever I can to like get my concentration off, just going as hard as you can and sprinting. And I just have promised myself I'm just not going to pick up a call. I'm not going to start texting, even if it's a short response, whatever, it's banned. And I'll pick it up at the very end and do it.
Well, you look great. You're feeling great. It's going to be a great summer for Matt Hardy. Coming in the next week or so, guys, we're going to announce a really cool live event.
Yes.
It's going to be coming to the East Coast. So be on the lookout. We're just lining up the final details of that and crossing some T's and dotting some I's. But any chance you get to see the Hardy Boys this summer, make sure you do. I know you're in Oklahoma City this weekend, and
yes,
I'm sure it's going to be a great one there. And I'm looking forward to a fun summer ahead. Let's talk WWE.
I was just going to say too, I did double cardio today. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just, even before we did this, Maxwell wanted to set a new record, and our record was 1.5 miles so far, and we did 2 miles together.
Wow.
So he was pretty excited about that. Plus it was 9 degrees outside. So he's like, oh, it's really hot.
Yeah, it's hot as hell, man. Summer's here, baby.
It is. Summer's here, and I'm here for it. You will hear no complaints out of me. I am all good.
It's pool season at the compound.
It certainly is. Every single day. It looks like a nudist colony if you're just hanging around this house.
Oh, boy. Okay, let's get into this. Matt, I want to talk about this with you because we got some news this week. Obviously, WWE is going to Saudi Arabia for King and Queen of the Ring, but WWE is going to apparently within the next 6 to 12 months be looking to expand their working deal with Saudi Arabia. Chairman of the General Entertainment Authority, Turki Al-Sheikh, was recently interviewed by Ariel Helwani on his show. And he mentioned that they're looking to bring a major PLE like WrestleMania or maybe the Royal Rumble to Saudi Arabia. So we could be looking at a totally different landscape when it comes to Saudi Arabia holding these events, which they've been holding about 2 per year since 2018. And I wanted to bring this topic up to you because it's been a very controversial relationship between WWE and Saudi Arabia, but you were there for the very beginning of it.
Mm-hmm.
And not many wrestlers have been willing to go on the record and talk about some of those experiences earlier on. Things have changed a little bit since then, but it all comes back to a concept that is something that I've done a lot of studying on over the years. My thesis in college was about the intersection of race patriotism and the militarization of sports. And it comes back to this concept of sports washing, which is something that Saudi Arabia has been accused of doing, where you utilize sports and entertainment as a way to almost gloss over what could be looked at as political or humanitarian travesties. And that's what a lot of this relationship has been deemed by many critics. But there have also been others who have looked at it and viewed it as a progressive step forward towards changing things. So we turn the clocks back to 2018. And this partnership is first announced that WWE is going to have 10 years worth of shows, 2 per year with Saudi Arabia. You're in the company. You're doing your stuff with Bray Wyatt. What's your first reaction when you hear you're going to be going to Saudi Arabia potentially twice a year?
I wasn't freaked out. I knew, or I trusted WWE in the fact if they felt it was safe for us to go over there and do a show that, I was okay with it, because I felt like they were going to try and make sure they have this working arrangement and they know what we're doing. We're going over there. I remember at the very beginning, it felt strange when they said, like, no women are allowed. And they were very strict about that. And that is one thing that one barrier they have broken as it moved forward, obviously. But I wasn't really afraid. I just knew they were very different. I was just going to make sure to, like, kind of hang out at the hotel and not really do anything out of the way. I was going to go over there, hang at the hotel, do the show, and then go back, because that's what it was. And it was one of those things I was excited just to see how the regular citizens of Saudi Arabia were going to take in and how they were going to react to having WWE wrestlers over there. So I was pretty excited about that in actuality.
And of course, I think that's the one thing that gets lost with a lot of the political elements at play here, is that ultimately you're doing shows for people who are largely innocent of any wrongdoing, right? These are citizens,
Of course.
these are paying fans, they're people who are there to try and have a good time. So that does get lost a lot of times in the equation with this conversation. But even forget the political nature of it. The fact that you're going to be going across the world, I know you've traveled all over the world, but this is an area that I'd imagine you probably hadn't been to many times, if at all, in your life. What was the general reaction from the locker room at that time?
There were some people that weren't crazy about it. Most people were just like, it's another town, another booking. It's global. It's a long flight, but it's another booking. That's how the majority of people were. There were some people that weren't fans of it. And, I guess I kind of get that. It depends on where everyone stands, I guess, on their beliefs of morality or whatever else you want to classify it as. But the majority of the crew was like, okay, well, it's another booking. They're going to take good care of us. So we'll go over there and get it done, and then we'll come back.
So as you mentioned, now I want to say there were house shows held in Saudi Arabia from 2013 through that point. Had you been on any of those house shows prior to that?
No, I went to Saudi Arabia twice for 2 of the events after they started doing them.
Okay, so the 2 pay-per-views you went
Yes.
to. So WWE received some criticism at that time for running the events, given the fact that women prior to 2017 were not allowed to attend sporting events, period. And then eventually that changes, that they're allowed to go if they're accompanied by a male guardian. The Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman had changed that. Not having women on these shows in the middle of WWE at the time, trying to move forward with its women's evolution, if you recall.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that as a colleague, as a performer, as someone who has shared locker room with so many of these important women within the industry, and the perspective during this period?
All right, I'm going to speak on it from a couple different ways. First, I'm going to speak on it from a WWE business opportunity. So WWE, they have the opportunity to go over there and have this huge deal where they make millions upon millions upon millions of dollars over the next 10 years, which is very beneficial for the company, and it works in everyone's benefit. And they're probably thinking, like, if we can open up the doors to getting women back on the shows, it seems like we are being a positive influence on Saudi Arabia and whatnot. And I understand that. I get that immediately. Like, I think about stuff from a business aspect first and foremost before anything else. From a personal aspect, I'm sure just saying no women are allowed, just knowing that that's just a staple of their culture and it has been for hundreds of years. It's strange. And I was saying, well, at least the girls are off. You know what I mean? At least if you're a girl, you're off and you don't have to do this long ass travel and whatnot. I don't necessarily, I didn't feel bad for them because I don't think they were missing out on anything if they weren't wanted there. You know, if their culture and their belief system that they have in place for their country and their religion didn't necessarily want them there, then it is what it is, and just kind of deal with it. And that's part of the gig of being a pro wrestler at WWE in those particular circumstances, I think. So it's just very cool that they were, because I didn't know if they would ever be able to open up and get females over there to participate on the show or wrestle in the ring and whatnot. And now that they're at the point where they've done that, which I think there's no way you can really look at that or spin that other than a positive change.
Well, I'll get into that in a little bit because I think there is an argument where it can go back to that sports washing concept that I was alluding to earlier.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
But,
that's great. I would love to.
But you know, we'll get to that chronologically here because I do think it is an important part of this conversation, because the first time that you do go over to Saudi Arabia, the women are not on the show. They're not allowed to be on the show. In fact, there's a promotional video aired during the Greatest Royal Rumble event in 2018 that features WWE women's performers in their normal ring gear. And as a result of that airing, the Saudi General Sports Authority actually issued an apology for indecent material airing during the event. So a pretty substantial statement there, one that they would start to begin to change on in just a little bit of time after that. But there are no women at all when you go over there for the Greatest Royal Rumble event, which is, we just passed it'd be the 6-year anniversary of it last month. That was April 27th, 2018 in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. What were your first impressions of the country when you got over there? Because it is certainly marketed internationally as this prosperous oasis almost of sorts.
It was reminiscent in some ways of Las Vegas, just because there were like some hotels that were just super extravagant and luxurious, but it was also very desert-like. It was hot. Inside the hotels, there were some like really overly nice, like super rich items and whatnot. Just it looked very fancy. So I mean, it was nice. It was. There was no point where it was like dirty or low rent, or everything was very nice over there. You know, like it was done right. And I think it's probably because, you know, it's one of those places where the government, they're going to make everything as nice as they possibly can. And there's a huge difference. Unlike America, there's not really like, you know, like a lower class, middle class, you know, a little higher, and then, you know, your top class with your riches and elites or whatever. It's pretty much like, you know, you're either in the government and you're all good, or you're like one of the top money earners or whatever, or, you know, you're just kind of like a regular person. I think the classes are a little more separated there. And all of those people that came to the show or that we met, they were all super kind. They were all super nice. I sent you a couple of videos before. I know I did like a VIP party at one point, and everybody there was just as friendly and as kind as they could have been. And that's one of the things that I think sometimes people forget about. Like most of the people that live in Saudi Arabia are just normal human beings like you and I that have red blood whenever their skin gets cut open, that have a heart and lungs and whatever else, and they're just trying to make it through every day and trying to live the best life they possibly can. So my impressions of it were that it was nice, and you could see there was wealth in the country. Some of the spreads we had to eat were like outrageously great and good. We were taken very good care of while we were there. The hotel was very nice. The food was very nice. So no complaints on any of that front. And even the people that we met with, that we worked with, that were like, more government type officials, they were all very nice. There was nobody that was weird. There was no one that was off-putting. Probably the strangest thing, and this is me being an American, right? And growing up in the South, it just grew up from my dad. I would get my ass beat if it wasn't yes sir, yes ma'am, and whatnot. Just the way the women had to wear, their outfits and the hijab, whatever. You just see the majority of the women's eyes. Not everyone had to dress fully like that, but the majority of the people did. There was one point where I was out on the beach hanging out with a couple guys, and a couple guys confronted us that were wearing shorts and, short sleeve shirts, whatever. And then, they said, "Oh, our kids are big fans. Da, 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 da. They would love to meet you." They said, "If you can wait a second, our wives are taking care of them." And the wives are over there and they're fully dressed, in the outfits that the wives have to wear, during the day when they're out in public. And it was just that was strange, and I guess, everybody that was there was just very much on their toes, and they just wanted to act proper because you didn't want to do anything that would break laws in Saudi Arabia, obviously, just because it's a very different culture from us. And it is what it is. We knew what we were going into. It was a very different culture. They live very differently than we do here in America. And I feel like even the experience of going over there made me appreciate America and the United States even more, just because of all the freedoms we have here.
So I want to ask you on that front, were you given any edicts as to what you could and what you couldn't do, what cultural norms existed versus what norms didn't exist as you were on your way over there?
One of the big things, especially for the wrestlers, no alcohol was allowed there. There was no alcohol. They said, don't try to bring alcohol. Don't try to bring drugs. That's like a very, very big deal and a very serious crime if you do that. That's the first thing that really stands out, I think. Yeah, I mean, that was the main thing, and everything else was just kind of be decent, And I think too, they said like don't venture out on your own or go with someone far away, like kind of stick around near the hotel. And I think we almost had to, because we were only there for like a day before, and then it was the show, and then we were out right after.
Matt, it is summer concert season. I got my eyes on the looks for some bands this summer. Who's on your radar, man?
Pearl Jam, man. They're touring, and I'm going to see if it works out. I have an appearance in one of these towns. Maybe one night I can catch a Pearl Jam show. And you know where I'm going to get my tickets at?
Please,
I'm going to Game Time, John.
Hell yeah, you're going to Game Time. And I'm going to Game Time this summer because Game Time makes getting tickets for concerts and events faster and easier, even if you don't buy tickets right away. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the show start time, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying concert tickets. This is my favorite time of the year. Like going outside, listening to live music, nothing gets better. If you follow me on Elon Musk's X, I've been marking out over AC/DC, getting back on the road. They're over in Europe right now, and I'm keeping my fingers crossed that they can get over stateside so I can use Game Time in order to see Brian Johnson rock at 76 years old and Angus Young killing it, dude. Duck walking his way into my heart. It's near and dear to me. What is your favorite Pearl Jam song, Matt?
I have three that I was a big fan of, but I would say my favorite of all time is Corduroy.
Okay. So
I would love to see them on a show where Corduroy is the opener. I would be down for that.
So the way you're going to make that happen is by downloading the Game Time app and at any moment's notice, purchasing those tickets. These are like my favorite parts of this app. The flash deals, and the zone deals. The exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game event make it easier than ever to purchasing that last-minute tickets. With the zone deals, you save even more when you choose a section and you let Game Time choose the seats for you. You toggle on their all-in pricing feature, and it's going to show the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout, because we love, and I mean we love, a little transparency here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy, do we not, Matt?
The Extreme Life of Matt Hardy is all about the transparency. We are transparent like Scotch tape.
That's right. And with the lowest price guarantee, Game Time is ensuring you that they are the best outlet to get you to the event, or it will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time's ticketing coverage also ensures that your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the entire ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Hardy for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Hardy, HARDY, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guarantee. How'd your body adjust to that?
Man, it's crazy when you're doing all those international trips, and I know they're doing some now, like for PLEs, the premium live events and whatnot. It's tough, man. You just kind of have to get sleep when you can get it, and just roll with the punches. It's not easy, especially if you're kind of going into a place where you're on the other side of the world and your sleeping hours are totally opposite and your wake hours are totally opposite. Those are the toughest. Like when you end up going to like an Australia or Japan or whatever else, where you're totally on the other side of the clock.
What is the travel like going over there? Is it a chartered flight by the company? How does that process unfold?
Yeah, we took a charter flight where we went to Germany, had a quick layover, refueled, and then Germany into Jeddah is the route we took, I think.
And is it, I guess I'm accommodation wise, is it a more accommodating flight than what you typically would be accustomed to?
No, yeah, I mean, anytime WWE would do those chartered flights, I mean, they would go all out. I mean, it'd be great food. They'd have drinks, whatever. I do remember how some of the guys were like, they said, okay, we're getting ready to enter into Saudi Arabia airspace. We have to lock away alcohol, no more alcohol while we're going back in. And that was like a thing that it had to do. It literally had to be locked away as soon as you entered Saudi Arabia airspace.
When you guys get there and you're experiencing the culture, did anyone express uneasiness or discomfort or anything of that nature?
Of the wrestlers that were there,
yeah, of the company that you were with.
No, no, not at all. I mean, we ended up going. We got to the hotel. There was a real nice gym. Most guys just stayed in house. I feel like that's what the majority of people like to do if we can. When we go international, we stay in house. Hopefully, there's a good gym there. And usually, the company would try and book it that way, that there's a nice gym in there that is suitable for everyone. There were 3 meals a day. We would go and eat. You know, there'd be breakfast and there'd be lunch and there'd be dinner, which were really good. They were great. Everyone was kind. They were nice to us. It was just, it was very much like a standard American trip. You know, if you were tucked away in a hotel, and the company took care of your meals and your expenses in the hotel for a couple of days. It very much felt like that. The only thing that felt different is when you heard people speaking in their native Saudi tongue, or when you walk, you know, when you stepped outside and you saw the street signs in Saudi as opposed to English. You know, those were the things that were very different. Obviously, the things that the women were wearing, and it was also one of those things too where, you know, there was a couple women that actually worked whenever we were getting our meals, the catered meals, and like they would serve you and they would say, you know, some of the ladies, like if they don't look you in the eye, it's not a sign of disrespect. They're just told not to or whatever else, you know, and that sometimes was a thing too, where the women were just, you know, they weren't supposed to act overly friendly with any of the males that were there, whoever it was. And once again, that goes back to just like their deep rooted culture.
Did Vince have a more visible presence during this trip than other trips that you can recall?
Maybe. I mean, he flew in on his own jet, so we didn't. He wasn't on the charter. We didn't see them there. We saw him at the event a little bit. He still. I mean, I got to tell you, whenever we came back for that run from 2017 to 2020, Vince was still. He was, you know, the Wizard of Oz. He was the man behind the curtain. It was really hard to get FaceTime with him unless you know, set up an appointment and did that. And I feel like that was done definitely by design, especially as he gets older. And, he would send people out, the other producers or his other top executives that worked underneath him to deal with the talent as opposed to him, and they would convey
Well,
messages back to
I
him.
guess I'm asking this more in the sense that he is clearly leading this major business and diplomatic partnership between him and the Crown Prince and the Sports Authority and everything. We've seen videos and pictures surface over the years of him having these big grand dinners with,
Yeah,
the Crown Prince and
he
people.
did. I know that first trip they did have a big dinner, and one of those videos and one of the photos that came out, I think like Taker was there, a couple of the other guys were, that hit like Vince's inner circle that he invited over, but he wasn't like actively around like the full roster or the boys,
Right.
as they say. He
Okay.
kind of did his thing with his couple chosen, inner circle guys.
Gotcha. 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 What was your take on the fandom in Saudi Arabia and how the product reached those fans? Were they super invested? Was it excitement from just seeing a live event? Were they super knowledgeable about the talent and the storylines? What was your uh, take on that?
I mean, they were very excited about meeting their favorite WWE superstars. Their enthusiasm was very strong. Whenever we would be, that, like I said, I had that one meet and greet where there was like a party where I just went in, and literally, I think my appearance, kind of the description of my appearance, was to go in and just say hello to people, take pictures with people, whatever they want to do, and that's what it was. And a lot of, I feel like it was a lot of the business partners of the people in Saudi that have kind of like were putting on this event. But yeah, they were all nice. They knew who everybody was. They were big fans of the product, obviously. A lot of them talked about in their childhood growing up being big fans of the Hardy Boys, which is wild. But no, I mean, everybody was nice. There was never any time where there were like awkward interactions or whatever else. I mean, if anything, if you stayed there too long, they would probably talk your ear off. Where you're like, okay, well, we've had to talk to these people too much, and they're getting a lot. So, I mean, they were enthusiastic. I mean, they had a lot of love for the WWE product.
I guess I'm asking because if you go back and watch those early Saudi shows, they are like not great television. They're
And they
very
weren't. And I'm going to say this. And my theory on that is, I feel like these people were very nervous in a big public setting just to kind of cut loose. I mean, that's kind of what it felt like to me. I feel like that's not something that they typically do. I felt like they sat there, they enjoyed it, and it was very much like a Japan crowd in some ways that is like being respectful. I mean, they were sitting there, and I feel like they did enjoy it. They just weren't sure. They weren't like these crazy, rambunctious American fans. You know what I mean? Where they're going like, fuck yeah, hell yeah, go get him, Matt Hardy, do that. Whoa, whoa, yeah, oh. They just kind of like,
yeah.
and they really were contained. I mean, that was, I feel like, a lot of people's theory that just being being in public, this being a televised event, that they just probably, maybe they weren't comfortable enough to kind of like really show out whenever they were reacting to the WWE wrestlers and the WWE program.
And even how the shows were booked, they were very much booked like house shows. They would have a lot of big attractions, but none of the matches were ever these great quote unquote bangers or anything until probably the last 2 or 3 years is when they started booking them more like, what you would become accustomed to with a WWE pay-per-view, where you get some really good matches and the build to all that stuff. It was very straightforward. Let's just go out there, put on a match, and get out. Were you guys given any direction from that level on like what type of match to put out there to appeal to these sorts of crowds?
No, we didn't. But I think they went into it with the right mentality to do it much like a house show, just to entertain people. I mean, because that's why we're there. And those people, that it wasn't going to change. Like you said, bangers and a pop. I have such a
Well, I
love
said
hate.
that to Pop you specifically.
Oh, I know.
So.
I have, as you know, I have such a love hate relationship with that term. But it's one of those things. Like if a banger would have went out there, I felt like they would have enjoyed it more if they were just entertained by the characters and the cheesy spots or whatever else. And I felt like that was the mentality going into this event. So nobody specifically said like, have a certain type of match, no one said have a 3-star match or have a 5-star match. They just said like, go out and just entertain the audience. That's what we're here to do. And when Bray and I did it, we leaned heavy into like our whole entertainment aspect.
Yeah, well, the spectacle was a big part of these matches. I mean, there's a rumor that has over the years permeated these Saudi shows, that the Sports Authority had wanted Yokozuna for one of the shows, like not having any idea that he had passed away 20 years earlier. Like, just expectations that were totally unrealistic in that sense, where a lot of these part-timers and spectacle performers are brought out, and we'll get into that a little bit here. But
Yeah, but
that first
that,
show,
that was true too, though. I mean,
yeah,
that
okay, go
was
ahead, elaborate on that.
no. I just know there were times where there were people who probably grew up as young children or teenagers, right, in Saudi, and they had these people that were their favorite wrestlers as they were growing up, and now they're, working in this sports authority. Is that the term you said it was? The Saudi
Yeah, it was
Sports
the Saudi
Authority.
Sports Authority at the time.
But and they said, "Hey, we want so and so guy." Like, I was probably a big fan of him growing up or whatever, and they did ask for some people that were like no longer with us. I know that did happen on a couple of occasions, and then they also were willing to, like, if you make these big matches, the whole DX versus Brothers of Destruction match, the match we'll talk about a little later on, Undertaker versus Goldberg. There were people that really wanted like these big specific dream matches, and they wanted them to go down in Saudi, and they were like super happy to get those.
They did get them all right. The first show was the Greatest Royal Rumble, which you were on with Bray, and you guys defeat the Bar, Cesaro, and Sheamus in 8 minutes and 50 seconds. Super quick match to win the vacant Raw Tag Team Championship. And
sorry we didn't have a banger, John.
I know. I was disappointed. But I mean, this is, in all seriousness, it's a very big deal for you personally, because I know how special your tag run with Bray was for you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the ideal place for you guys to culminate that story and win the championship, but it's a big moment. You guys become tag champs. What was that match like for you guys, and the moment of you guys winning those titles after months and months of feuding and then joining together?
It was cool, and looking back at it, especially with the events of Bray's passing, it means all the more. And I'll never forget, we did have a special moment after we came back through, and I do remember Vince had said something once again. He said, like, you guys have the opportunity to be very, very special together. You have the opportunity to be very, very special together, and I can see great things if this is done right. And I remember we came back through, and I remember I spoke with Wyndham for a second, and they asked us to take a couple of pictures for social, and we did. And he said, we should grab some of our own pictures too. And we did. We actually took some other photos with the titles. I think Liv Morgan actually took a couple of photos for us too with our phones. But I remember he said, man, this is really cool. He said, like, I was doing this thing over here, and I was kind of, no longer have the Wyatt family. And are we all good here?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. I heard some music in the background. It might be in my house.
I think it's in your house. Yeah,
it probably is. And he said it's really cool, man, because we were both doing this thing on our own, and then we worked against one another. You created this somewhere else, and I kind of created this here. And a lot of people would ask about seeing this as a dream match, and then like kind of together as a team. He said, we got to do it. I remember like the closing lines was, this is a really cool deal, Hoot. And I just remember that specifically. He just kind of had that real contagious, infectious smile, and just like said, this is a really cool deal, Hoot. That's a big word that he would go to. He would refer to a lot of people as Hoot. His love for Robert Gibson and Ricky Morton.
Did you feel the energy from that crowd that night? Like what was the reception you received in the ring?
We knew going out watching the show, it was a pretty tame audience, and they were pretty subdued. So we went out there with the mindset, like, let's turn on our stuff, and, we'll do our wonderfuls, and we'll do our climax or whatever else it is. And we'll try and entertain the audience, and I feel like it was probably the best case scenario, and the smartest scenario was to do a match that was just a solid match. It was also entertainment and kind of storyline driven more than anything else, as opposed to like doing a ton of moves, because I don't think that was going to change a lot, considering the crowd reaction wise. So yeah, we were okay with it. Would it have been better if the crowd would have exploded and the roof would have blown off the place? Yeah, of course it would have been. But like, you make the most of whatever you have to work with, and that's a huge part of pro wrestling.
Jeff would also face Jinder Mahal on that show. He'd beat him in a quick 6-minute match. Did Jeff have any thoughts about being over there?
Very much the same. He was very similar to me. He was just, all right, I'll just go over here, do my stuff, then head back home. All good. They say we're good and everybody's fine, and they're in tight with the government. They're in tight with the Saudi office, brother. So we should be good.
So that show saw what was dubbed the greatest Royal Rumble ever. It was a 50-man Royal Rumble. Bryan Danielson was in it for an hour and 16 minutes and 5 seconds. I'm sure that was right up his alley. There was no other way he'd rather spend that night after he entered number one. They had the likes of Hiroki Sumi, who's a famous sumo wrestler, appear in this.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Henry came out of retirement to wrestle in this. Kurt Angle was in the match. A lot of people who you wouldn't typically see. Baba Tunde, who had been with the company for a hot second at that point, was in this. And of course, it's remembered mostly, aside from that, for Titus World Slide, where Titus O'Neil was running to the ring and slipped and fell under the ring. You're shaking your head.
It was just the craziest, most insane thing ever. I remember everyone saw him and saw underneath the ring, and everybody's like, he's dead. I mean, everybody felt like he slid into a portal and he's now somewhere in the 15th dimension. It was just so crazy that he ran and slid. And two, like, there are in the middle of the frame of the rings, there's like an iron or a steel post, this big and thick that goes to the floor. And we're like, oh my God, if he slid in and like hit his neck on that thing, he broke his neck. He made it in and he got out unscathed, which was crazy. It was so crazy. But it was just like such a viral moment because, like, if you would have planned that, you couldn't have done it in 1,000 takes, right? It just happened on that one take and he was able to get in and get out unscathed and uninjured. It was crazy.
Well, we got like 25 replays of it, so I don't know if he came out of it unscathed, truth be told, because I'm sure Vince was in the back probably having the time of his life watching that.
No, I mean, he was going to make something out of it. If you have a memorable moment, Vince is for the moments, man. And regardless of what you think of it, it created a crazy moment because it was just such a weird, strange, out of the blue event. Especially he ran and tripped and slid and went all the way under the ring, fully under the ring. It was insane. So yeah, I'm sure Vince thought, like, fuck, we're obviously going to call back to this one quite a bit.
Braun Strowman wins the greatest Royal Rumble. Matt Hardy, was it the greatest Royal Rumble of all time?
No, it wasn't the greatest Royal Rumble of all time. I'm not even sure which one I would label the greatest Royal Rumble, but I mean, some of the Rumbles that have had like these great layers and these great different scenarios throughout it with different stories interacting and whatnot. And you're wondering who's going to go into Mania. Those are the greatest Royal Rumbles.
That question was a baiting question.
Of course it was.
Anyway,
that's bait. That's bait, John. I knew that.
So the event came under a lot of criticism because there was a lot of promotional material that fans, politicians, people on the outside, news organizations looked at as essentially, for lack of a better term, propaganda for the Saudi government. There was several tape packages, like promo packages, that talked about just how great the Crown Prince was and all the changes that were coming within Saudi society. And that was a major talking point coming out of the show. How did you guys feel after the show was over? And was any of that on your radar at all?
I don't think it was really on my radar at that time. I'm sure we saw some of it, especially if it hit a strong headline or whatever, and it was something that was kind of a viral talking point, I'm sure. But like, nobody was really thinking about it like that. I can say, honestly, is whenever that show was done, the most excited thing we were for all of the talent was to get on a plane and go back home.
Yeah.
And I had sent you a video of the airport. It was crazy. We were there at 4:00 in the morning waiting for our charter. It ended up being delayed a little bit too, and the airport was packed. I mean, slam packed. It was crazy. We just wanted to get on that plane and get back home to America.
Yeah. Well, they'd have to go back later in the year, and you were not on this show. This was Crown Jewel.
Mm-hmm.
The big talking point, though, Matt, was that in the aftermath of Jamal Khashoggi's killing at the hand of Saudi agents, there was a lot of political pushback and sponsor pushback even on WWE continuing the relationship with Saudi Arabia. Now, on the business end, these shows were making a reported $40+ million a piece. So that's 2 shows a year, $80+ million to run 2 shows for the company. That's a ton of money. But Jamal Khashoggi, who you may recall was a journalist, and he was essentially dismembered by agents of the Saudi government. And the company, WWE, received a lot of pushback from Democrats and Republicans alike to discontinue or to reevaluate the relationship. But they decided to move forward. Stephanie McMahon called the event, and she said it was an incredibly tough decision given that heinous act, but ultimately reiterated that it was strictly a business decision. Several talent go on to boycott or not attend, at least.
They told everyone ahead of time. They said, if you don't feel comfortable going to Saudi Arabia, you don't have to go.
So that's what I was going to ask.
That was a group talent meeting.
So that's what I was going to ask you. Sami Zayn doesn't appear in any of these because the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Syria, he's of Syrian descent, was not good at the time. True. Kevin Owens stood with him and didn't attend. Bryan Danielson, did not attend this show because of the Khashoggi situation. John Cena, who was really breaking into the mainstream at the time, was supposed to be on the show. He pulled out of it. And I believe there were a few others as well. Roman Reigns, I think, also pulled out of this show. So that's what I wanted to ask you. Mm-hmm. How does that situation unfold? Are talent talking about this amongst themselves? When does the decision from management come down that you guys are allowed not to attend if you would like not to?
I remember I was off TV, if I'm not mistaken. So the Crown Jewel was in late.
This was late 2018.
Yeah, because we did a run with Bray, and they, we left TV, and the main reason we left is because they weren't sure what they were going to do with Bray. They were going to reset the Bray character, and I just had some time off during that. And I remember I wasn't on that show, and I was okay. I remember hearing about the killing, and that was crazy. It happened in Istanbul, Turkey, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Correct.
Is that really? And I remember thinking, like, wow, it's just crazy, that we're like dealing with that, but it was a weird vibe. And I imagine there were a ton of guys that had a weird vibe going over there just because it was just such weird circumstances. And there's something now that has been pinned, on Saudi Arabia. So yeah, that is weird. And I do remember there was a big stir as far as people, saying they should back out of that show, or people saying they should, rethink the relationship. I do remember it was a big controversial talking point.
Would you have gone in the aftermath of that?
Well, it's funny. I don't even know if I've thought about that because I knew I wasn't going because like, I probably wouldn't have wanted to go.
Yeah.
But I probably would have gone if they wanted me to go.
Yeah.
That's probably where I'm at. But really, that
we know for the main event talent, the paydays were substantial, but were the normal talent, was the payday greater for that show?
They were majorly increased, yes.
What kind of context can you give us on that?
I mean, whenever you were doing those events, it was usually from like another pay-per-view or whatever. It was 3 or 4 times what you would typically get.
Wow.
So, yeah, it was because I remember I was very pleasantly surprised with what I got from the deal with, myself and Bray.
Why do you think that was? Was it because they recognized there was pressure? A political pressure, and that for you going, they wanted to reward you for that? Do you think it was just because of how much money they were making off the show?
I think a little bit of both. I think they were trying to reward the guys, and then I think they were making a lot of money, so it didn't hurt them as much to like keep the talent happy because they knew they were sending talent to a strange environment. So I think it was a little bit of both of those.
But you were given a meeting from talent from talent relations that said you guys don't have to go if you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gotcha. So yes, that would happen as we alluded to, and the show would would occur. That was the show in which DX did reunite. Just insane to think that Shawn Michaels, after being so hell-bent on not coming out of retirement, came out of retirement to work this match.
That's what money do.
I was about to say, how many extra zeros do you think that paycheck had for him to come out and work this match? Boy. Oh boy is right. And it was a disastrous match. Disastrous.
It's so funny. Like I feel like I remember watching it back and people just shit on that match so bad. It didn't seem like it was anywhere near as bad as what people said it was, but I don't know. It makes me want to go back and watch it. Is it on Peacock?
Oh yeah. Well, Triple H like tore his pec in the match.
No, I know that. I didn't know that he got hurt and there were problems there, but like I know people clown the match so much, and I just remember I was watching that match whenever it took place, and I knew obviously it wasn't these guys in their prime, but I didn't think it was as bad as people made it out to be. And it seems like as time goes on, it grows worse and worse and worse. The legend of the match.
It is a shame that Shawn Michaels' last match will go down. I'd almost rather Shawn Michaels just come back for a one-off in a Royal Rumble match or something like that, get in there for 5 minutes, throw some super kicks, and then we could say that was his final match. Because
like now, like being the Rumble,
like now, like next year's Royal Rumble, have Shawn come back for 5 minutes to throw some super kicks. Let's call that his last match, because this was not great. And it's right, he's probably the best part of the match because he's Shawn Michaels and he's still great. But
sure,
I mean they had 30 minutes. There was a 30-minute main event. Just totally unnecessary. But anyway, that match comes and goes. Renee Paquette is actually on commentary for this. So that's the first involvement we see from women there. And then that gets us to Super Showdown, which is June 7th, 2019. You're in a 51-man battle royal that Mansoor wins by eliminating all lives.
Brother, it was 50. You gotta up it one. You gotta be greater than.
Well, it was 50, and then I think Mansoor was a surprise, if I remember correctly.
But they upped it. It's the first time there's ever been a 51-man Royal Rumble, brother. Battle
Royal, which I'm pretty sure means everyone was in the ring together. And Manny has Saudi Arabian roots, so he's in this match, and they go nuts for him, even though he hadn't even been on WWE television to that point.
Sure.
I mean, you're in this match. What do you remember about that?
Is he native Saudi?
He's either native or it's in his blood. He was born in Riyadh.
Okay, cool. The one thing I was going to say, even about those guys, I got to interact with him a little bit, and I saw him and Mace. I think I don't know Mace very well, but I saw those guys at WrestleCon and spoke to him for a second in the elevator, right? But man, the stuff they've been doing where they've been going all over the globe and like they've been doing like dusty finishes, I think, and they win the titles and they hold them up and take the picture and then they like turn them back or whatever. But you see the picture of them like winning the Poland Tag Team Championships.
Yep.
And then they did that deal in Uganda, which went viral, right? Which was real cool. I really applaud them with what they're doing. I'm digging that, how they did the Maximum Male Models or whatever it was, and now they changing this and rebranding themselves and doing this thing all over the globe. Just good for those guys. I love that, and I love to see that they're creating buzz for themselves. Yes, I was in that match. I literally don't really remember much of anything about it, except I couldn't wait for it to be over and get back to the airport and go home. I just remember like whatever it was I was doing, I was just ready to get it done and go back home. I really don't remember anything about that match. It was very, I remember me and I think Carl Anderson was there. We were talking about, I would imagine you'd be in that match. We're just like, how fast can we get out of this? Like if we're not winning, like let's try and get out of this match as fast as we can.
Carl Anderson was in fact there.
Yeah.
And that both Good Brothers were in that match with you.
Yeah. We were just talking about like let's see how fast we can get out of this and let's get showered.
You try to do the Farouk gimmick.
Oh, of course. Yes. Look at that. I've turned to Ron Simmons. Damn.
Shouldn't have even taken your jewelry off. Just get in there and get out.
Yeah. They said, oh, hey, tonight we got you booked in a 51-man battle royal. And I said, we won't be doing that again.
Well, you're the table setter for the biggest main event in WWE history, which is The Undertaker versus Goldberg. A match that 25 years prior would have been one of the biggest matches that could have possibly ever happened. Instead, this match too is a total disaster. Goldberg nearly kills the Undertaker by dropping him off a jackhammer. It is a disaster of epic proportions. And Undertaker's face at the end of this match has been a meme that has permeated wrestling Twitter
Yeah.
ever since. What do you remember about that match?
I remember watching it beside Randy Orton. It was a locker room sellout. And I just remember like that deal where Taker came down on his head, just the looks in between people, like, just people were pretty shocked by it. And it was like, I remember, and you said 25 years. I feel like it probably been 20 years ago, right? Like, cause that was in 2019.
I guess 99. Yeah. So sure.
Yeah. If, like 99, it would have been a huge match, whatever. But I think a lot of people, I think a lot of the talent were worried the match was going to be what it ended up being, as opposed to like being able to like kind of get through something that was solid but quick and impactful. And unfortunately, I think there were a lot of people that thought it might end up being like it was, and it ended up being that way.
Yeah, not great. Now, you said it was a locker room sellout. Why was it a locker room sellout? Because people want to see the match, or were people anticipating a disaster?
I don't think people were anticipating a disaster. I think everyone hoped they would go out and they would put in 5 good, smart, well-worked quality minutes of entertainment. So I think people knew it had the potential to not be great. So I think that's why so many people were like watching. It happened to me in the locker room where we were all like changing and getting ready to. So it was on a monitor there. So we had the ability to. But I remember as the match went on and the deeper it got over those next few minutes, like everybody was watching it. And it is that terminology of what was a locker room sellout.
Do you remember there being a fallout from it?
Nothing that I witnessed. I was glad Taker was okay because a couple of those things looked pretty bad. And I felt bad for Bill too.
Did Bill have heat coming out of that?
I don't know. In the reality, like, was he even around? He was just
not really.
Yeah, he wasn't around a lot. So I don't. It's hard to have heat if you're someone who's not around. They're just bringing you in because the Saudis want to pay a ton of money for you to perform. And there's people that hate Bill Goldberg. Bret Hart, he's one that stands out more than anybody else. But I've got along fine with him, and he's always been friendly. Whatever else, I've never had to work with him at a top level main event program either. But I got along fine with him, and I liked him, and I like Taker. So I felt bad for them because they just had a rough go at it.
Man, I mean, it's one of Undertaker's final matches too. He has a few others after it, but that's just crazy to think about in general. Now, later that year, you are not on the Crown Jewel show. However, it is known for 2 things. Number one, the women do get on the show. Natalya defeats Lacey Evans by submission. I guess I'll tee you up on that first. The women getting on the show in the first place, the whole sports washing thing again. Oh, we're making so much progress. We're having women on the show, but they have to be fully clothed. Women can't be there in attendance on their own without a male present with them. It's this weird dichotomy still of, okay, look how progressive we're being, but at the same time, all these cultural restrictions still exist. What was the internal and external reaction to the women finally getting on a show?
I thought it was cool that WWE were able to talk the Saudi people, Sports Authority, into allowing that to happen. And, they obeyed the rules with the women being fully clothed, covering all parts of their body. But I do think it was a positive because I think there are Saudi girls, young girls who could watch that and like be inspired that they might could do something too. So, I mean, I get what you're saying, but like, once again, man, just considering how their culture is and how it has been, and it's just Saudi Arabia and it's kind of the nature of the beast. I thought WWE was successful in being able to get the women on the show, even though they couldn't wear what they typically wear, and they still wanted them to respect the culture to a degree. I thought it was something that could be very inspirational to young
Sure.
girls in Saudi Arabia and young girls that live in that part of the country that kind of live under those same standards. So I thought that was cool.
And for the record, I'm not telling anyone how to feel about it. I'm just simply covering this is the reality of what the discourse is, and
Sure.
this is something that happens way outside of Saudi Arabia. It happens in the U.S. all the time. A classic example of sports washing is when a country bids for the Olympics, and they get the Olympics, and they spend all this money on the Olympics while their societal economics are not strong. Or, there's like Brazil's the classic example of that, where they put all this money into the Olympics and the World Cup. Meanwhile, the poverty disparity in the country was absurd at the time. So this is not a concept unique to just Saudi Arabia. It exists, but that happens here. Now, the big thing that people still talk about to this day, Matt, after this show, is that there is reportedly a dispute on the runway where the company finishes the event. There's a charter flight carrying about 200 WWE employees, including performers and staff, and it gets delayed on the tarmac. The company official line and the airline state that it was mechanical issues, but your boy Hugo Savinovich and Dave Meltzer also reported that there were some disputes with the Saudi government over missed payments to WWE for the previous shows, and that 20 WWE employees, including Vince and 12 wrestlers, booked their own flights back to the US. And as a result, the ensuing SmackDown taping is completely redone because there's just not enough talent there. There were several wrestlers who took to social media about this as it happened and after it happened. And it seemed like it could have been potentially, Matt, a very dangerous situation if you believe the reports. You were not there, but I have no doubt that you spoke to individuals who were there about this. What can you share about that incident?
Yes, I've spoke to many individuals. I spoke to some individuals real time as they were over there and, being, sitting on the tarmac, sitting on the runway. It's weird. And I would love to have an official stance on it, but I don't. I feel like if you look at it and you speculate, it is easy to think there was some dispute between the entities that did the show, being WWE and the Saudis. But I don't know that. And there's some guys who do believe that is what happened. There are some other people who don't, and they said they felt comfortable the whole while. So I don't know. I can't comment, with complete clarity and confidence without a doubt. But I mean, does it seem like in the big scheme of things, something suspicious may have been going down? Of course it does. It certainly does. But do I know that for sure? I don't.
But I guess I'm asking, when you're talking to talent, was there a suspicion among many of them that something might have been amiss?
I mean, well, that's what I said. I said there are some people who definitely thought something was wrong
in real time.
Yeah, there was some sort of dispute, and there were other people that said, "Nah, it's just like it's no big deal. We'll be out of here before too long." I mean, I heard it from both sides, just depending on who they were talking to and who they were interacting with. So I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. One thing that I've really tried to do hard in life, especially as I get older, is just actually speak on things that I legitimately know about. If I do legitimately know about it, so it was crazy, especially being in Saudi Arabia. It really, it's a chilling feeling to think that could have been a possibility that may have happened. And I guess it could be, but I certainly cannot validate that. I do not know. There were some guys who were very suspicious of it. There were some people who thought it really wasn't out of the ordinary.
Here's my last question for you on all this stuff, and then we'll wrap up here. One of the biggest ethical topics of discourse around these Saudi Arabia shows, as you alluded to and confirmed, your paychecks were massive coming out of these shows. Was there ever any ethical dilemma, whether it be for you or colleagues of yours that you spoke to, about taking money that came from that source?
For me, no. And I just don't think too deeply into it. I mean, I think this is another WWE venture. that now they're doing business over here, and I just don't think that deeply into it. And
Yeah.
whatever people think, that's my reality.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some people that were. You know, there was the famous CM Punk line, right? You know, with who's he even speaking to? Was it Miz or whatever? It was when he was doing that show, hosting the
the backstage show.
Yeah, that backstage show or whatever. I remember there was that deal. I don't know. I don't feel like there were probably some people that maybe did have a dilemma or had an issue with it, or maybe have thought that into it. I'm sure like a Sami Zayn would be one, maybe Bryan Danielson. You know, we talked about a couple of these people, and you said John Cena. He was also starting to go mainstream. I'm sure he was thinking about his image at that point too. When I'm doing that at that point, I'm a wrestler wrestling for the WWE, and it's a WWE extended gig, and I'm just going over there and doing that. At the end of the day, I'm getting my money from WWE, who's getting it from the Saudis. I did not think that deeply into it. And even here at the end, I just want to add, like, I know there is a big dilemma. There's a lot of divisiveness when it comes to this topic, when people talk about, you know, WWE doing stuff in Saudi Arabia. But the people that were in Saudi Arabia, one thing that I did appreciate was the people that I was able to interact with in the small window of time I was there, were just super happy for us to be there. They were normal human beings, most of them very good nature, very good hearted, and just good human beings. And we were there entertaining like a lot of good quality human beings that were just there because they love pro wrestling, and WWE is, you know, their top form of entertainment, and they were excited to be there. So the Saudi people were nice, especially the regular people that were there that I interacted with. I had great interactions across the board. They were all very nice, all very kind. Obviously, I'm not dealing with the government. I'm not dealing with the sports authority of Saudi Arabia and anything else. But, you know, the people that I was there, my experiences in Saudi Arabia were really good. It felt strange being there, knowing I'm an American from the United States and our cultures are very different. It felt weird being there because they are so different religiously and culturally, and the way they apply their laws and whatnot. So I enjoyed the interactions I had with the Saudis that were there, and they were cool, especially the wrestling fans and the regular everyday people that I dealt with in the hotel or right outside the hotel or in the arena. So that was great, and I do want to compliment them on that, because there were a lot of great people over there that really loved wrestling.
Yeah, you know, that whole ethical question I asked you, I can see both sides of the argument. You know, I can see the people who say, well, you shouldn't be taking that money because of where it comes from. But I also see the side of the argument too. It's like, you could probably trace any source of income back to something bad that you've ever taken. You've probably worked for some promoters over the years who have done some horrible things unbeknownst to you. I've
Sure.
taken money from in my journalism career. You're these big corporations who I'm sure have vested interest in some shady areas, right? Like all this money funnels from questionable places and just natural circulation. So I see both sides of that argument for sure, but I think you're being very fair in how you're discussing that. And the one thing I will say, Matt, you watch the Saudi shows now, A, the quality of the shows are better from a content standpoint, and B, the crowds are really invested, and we got a Barty Hardy showing, you know?
Hi, Barty. Barty, have you ever been to Saudi Arabia?
No. What's that mean?
It's another country very far away. That's what we're talking about.
I don't think he'll be going over there anytime soon. But yeah, so I think the shows have improved, and those crowds have become really invested to the point where they just built the WWE experience there, which is it's a theme park now, a WWE theme park that exists there. So there certainly is an appetite for it there from the fans too. But again, you can all circle it back to that whole conversation about sports washing that we had earlier too. It's a very fascinating, complicated topic, and I'm grateful that you were willing to talk about some of this, and I think you were very fair in how you addressed it. Is there anything else you want to add on it?
No, it was a fun conversation. It's really unique. It was a unique experience being able to go to Saudi Arabia. You know, it was a couple times. It wasn't for a very long time, but it was really unique. And I think looking back at it, I'm glad I got to check that off my list of places I've been to.
Would you be open to going back there?
Yeah, I would. I think so.
Okay. Good stuff, Matt Hardy. Appreciate your candidness and honesty there. Appreciate you, Barty Hardy, joining us here late on the podcast. I know you want to spend some time with your data, so I'm going to sign off here. I'm going to remind everyone, you head on over to advertisewithhardy.com to promote your business to the extreme. Get it out in front of thousands of listeners and viewers every single week here on the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We would love to have you on our team on the Extreme Life. And of course, you head on over, check out our socials too, at Matt Hardy Pod, at Matt Hardy Brand, and Matt's YouTube page, Matt Hardy Brand. That's where you get some content and clips right at your fingertips. Huh. Good one in the books, Matt. Anything you'd like to say to the Extreme Life faithful here as we sign off?
Barty, tell everyone hello.
Hi.
Hey, will you ever be on TV?
I will.
What?
I will.
I will. Okay, no more spoilers. Very good. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for tuning in and checking out John and I every single week. We appreciate your support, and we want to keep this thing rocking and rolling, man. Keep this podcast growing. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's discussion about Saudi Arabia. It was a fun one, and hope to see you guys very, very soon.
Barty, we end this show every single week with a big, big, big delete. So I'm going to tee it up, and I want you to join your dad. Well, hold on. You got to wait for the cue. And
follow me. Do it when I do.
And then we're going to say goodbye to everyone. So the words have been spoken. This has been the Extreme Life of Matt Hardy. We will see you next time.
Ready? Delete!
Hey, this is the National Treasure, Nick Aldis, and I am recommending that you go to savewithconrad.com for all your home buying needs. If you listen to any of Conrad's shows, which I do on a regular basis, it's pretty hard to miss the fact that he's in the mortgage business. When the time came that we were looking to buy a place, it was really my first choice. I just got the feeling right from the start that Jimmy and Conrad and the whole team really wanted us to succeed. It felt like it should. It felt like we were all on the same team. You know, it felt like we were in business together, which is, to me, is really how a home purchase and a mortgage process should feel. Not only would I recommend Save with Conrad to friends and coworkers, I have many times already. If I know that they're in the, they're house hunting, my first recommendation to them always is get in touch with Conrad. Like, his team are the real deal, and they will be straight up with you and do everything they can to get you in that house.
NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com.